Just wait. Sort your shit out. I think it's still live again. Let's go, eh? I'll just press record. Yeah. Yeah, we're just recording for Keelan.
Oh, okay. I was coming back. That's right. It's a really important part of the country. Historically, just age-wise, and given
Will the road go through the blocks? The road goes through them, so you lean on the other side. Yeah, lean on the other side.
Whoa, look at that glass!
You're good?
No, you're right, stand here beside me. So where we are here, this is where, as you know, well, some of you probably don't know, this is the boundary, what was the beach access, the fishing access, off the end of the Rarua block. Which runs straight down there. But we've just had some plantings and some posting of some new grapes put in there. And there, right here where you are, there's a pit right here. Right there. So when the digging was done here, some 25 paces just out here, there was a beautiful big adze what was right on the surface right here, and that was the adze. We kicked it off from the Foster report. So there was an archaeology report done about the disturbance in 2013, was it, Keelan?
2014.
14, sorry. Lost in dates. And yeah, so that's where that adze was, right on the surface. And as we went across this embankment here, heading across towards the fence line, there was a whole adze making area there. And we actually, when we, in the 2015 and 16 on the coastal survey with Otago University, when we walked across there, and it was documented that particular site right there. So right through here, it doesn't matter where you go, there was like, we walked out about 50 paces and 50 paces that way in 2015. And there was like 50 fire sites right there. So it's, as we walk out there and you have a look, it's everywhere on the ground, everywhere. It's a big site. So the main goes right over from where the spring is over here, where the spring is at the Marakupa, and it heads out across this ridge here and around that ridge this way. So within the Marakupa, in the drain there, what you'll find there is about 200 truckloads of dirt which was taken from the drain reserve and placed in there. So for some of you who know where the drain reserve is or have land at the drain reserve, you'll find that the stock bank's now gone. And if you're looking for it, here it is in here. Anyway, we'll wander out here and have a look. If there's any questions, guys.
So they took the stock bank from there and dumped it here?
Yes.
Who did that?
Richard, we running through the story of Kōwhai Park here. Oh, okay. Yep. Okay. One I always enjoy. The one I always enjoy is the one that my great-grandfather evidently told to Mr. Elby. He's got a book. Some of you have probably read without realising that it was all your uncles, grand-uncles, who told him the story called Kei Puta Te Waira, or Behold the Waira. And the actual setting of Kōwhai is actually happening with Te Rauparaha and Ngāti Toa and their allies coming down from Kāwhia. And just as a bit of a background, a few years ago I saw a story where they interviewed Tā Machu Ray about all of the trials and tribulations that Ngāti Toa had moving from Kāwhia down onto the Heta Whenua. I don't know if anyone else has seen that story, but it's a real epic story. You know, there's lots of high notes, low notes, lots of feats of bravery for Ngāti Toa as they moved through this style territory, picking up allies. When they got to the Heta Whenua, there were some people there, and the battles, as they do when you're a refugee, go up and down, and Ngāti Toa were eventually forced on to the island of Kapiti. And so in that sort of setting, the word went out for all of the people who were original inhabitants there, even down here, our Ngāti Kuia, our Rangitani people, were asked to send people up to the battle. So there's this huge armada that went to Kapiti Island, and not that I'm wanting to cast aspersion on our leadership, but we all got there and there were too many generals and not enough Indians, so we couldn't figure out how to rid ourselves of these damn impudent refugees. And so some wanted to go by night, evidently some wanted to go by day. It's now irrelevant, we lost. We got a bloody trouncing. And some of the people were captured, some of them jumped out of their wakas and swum ashore because it was quicker to swim than row. And so it was in that setting that the news came back, I guess, to this place, that there was a new sheriff in town. It was Te Rauparaha, Ngāti Toa and his Taranaki allies. They were musketed up and they were, you know, a force to be reckoned with. And our old people told Elvi, there was a chief here, his name was Te Rua Uniuni. He was the Rangitani man of the moment here, and he said he wasn't afraid of Te Rauparaha. That if he came to the South Island, ka patua, he would grind his head up with a fern root crusher. And as we all know, for those of us that have been round to the Royal on Friday night back in the 60s, when fight talk is rolled out, you have to be pretty good. My experience, when I went to town and got my nose broken, I never got the rest of me kicked in because I went with two Hemi women. And so that's really the backdrop. Ngāti Toa seemed to have managed to get across the water okay, because our people had jumped out of the wakas and swam to the shore so they could get there faster, and so there were plenty of waka. They found some people who were able to tell the secrets of how to get across Rokawa, and they arrived up the river. Now it's really interesting. People have different stories about how they came. I'm only telling you what Grandpa Peter has talked about in this book to Elvie. I never ever met my great-grandfather. Some of you may have, because he died in 1952, the year that I was born, allegedly. So they came, evidently rode up the river, and the people here, the Rangitani people here, saw these people arriving. They weren't scared, because their man said, you don't have to worry about Te Rauparaha, because if he plays up, ka patua. And so they weren't worried. Evidently, and I know most of you will think that this is just me injecting something into the story, Te Rauparaha knew about some of the local politics here. And he said, oh look, these pa you've got, you need to modify them, because your damn enemies down the coast, those Ngaitahus, they've got muskets, and if they come back up here, you're in grave danger. And I just happen to know how to modify a pa so that it's also a musket pa. And so the old Rangitane chief, feeling pretty secure as you can do from time to time, said, oh, that's a good idea. So they said what they should do is, where the palisades were, they should dig some ditches. And hey, instead of a fair work, let's have a bit of a competition. And let's get our two good teams, and let's see who can dig the trench the fastest. And so, of course, as is our custom, that's why we've got more All Blacks than any other tribe in the country. As we all know, Jamie Joseph's the Rangitane, right? The digging started, and of course the Rangitanes, being good diggers because they dug all those canals, they edged ahead, and then they were clearly winning. They got about up to here, and they were looking across and laughing, and that was about the time, according to Grandpa Peter, that Ngāti Toa jumped out of the trench, rushed over, killed all the ones that were in the trench, and that was quite handy that they'd already dug their own graves. Then they ranged across this whole area, rounding up anyone else that was a follower of Te Rua Unioni. And Grandpa Peter says that Rua Unioni, he suffered the fate that he had promised Te Rauparaha, that he was actually the fellow who got patu, and it was done with a fern root crusher. Grandpa Peter also said that at that point Te Rauparaha rewarded the curse or the kanga that had been put on him, and so Kōwhai Pā, the focus then moved from the settlement to the battle, and Ngāti Toa, and when I say Ngāti Toa, I need to say I'm not leaving out Ngāti Rādua. They were all one people, and so those people, they called this area, the battle of the things John was talking about, they called the battle Patuaruhe, the fern root crusher. And I think there's a certain irony in that, isn't there? That we remember this as Kōwhai Pā because it's where we lived, and that's a really cool thing to think about. But occasionally we need to remember that old Pākehā saying from my father's side, that pride cometh before a fall. And that's why part of this area was known as Patuaruhe, in memory of the battle. Just to remind us that, you know, let's be careful what we say about people. Hey, as Kylie reminds me, he tapu te kupu. You know, he tapu te kupu. That's what's tapu, not necessarily bits and pieces of land. So that's, as I understand, the Battle of Kōwhai. Things carried on because I remember in our hearings, Iwi Nicholson talking for Ngāti Toa, and he was most insistent that after that initial argy-bargy happened, intermarriages take place, kaitaka wainga, in which lots of us descend from, those marriages take place where people of both iwi, so that iwi fights potentially become whānau arguments. And so I think that's what that fellow was referring. Keelan wrote a piece out about what that archaeologist said. I think that was what he was referring to without understanding the insight that is there. So when I look around all of us from that particular time, which was no different, if we look at it, no different to earlier conflicts that have taken place all around the Wairau, I look around now and all of us are part Ngāti Rārua, Rangitane, Ngāti Toa, Ngāti Rārua, Ngāti Toa, or Rangitane, Ngāti Rārua, Tiatiawa, Rangitane, Tiatiawa. The thing that binds us together is what Paul was reminding me as we walk along the fence. Whakapapa. And we need to know what our whakapapa is so we don't insult one another unintentionally. And that's really what the story of Kōwhai is all about. Isn't it? You're supposed to say hi. Yeah.
Kia ora, Richard. As you know, Ngāti Rārua and Ngāti Toa have different stories about that. So Ngāti Rārua actually landed at Pukatia at White's Bay. We came through and then we joined the battle with Ngāti Toa on the beach. So it's slightly different, and it was written by Alvy. He was quite cunning. He decided near the end of the book to go to Ngāti Rārua and Ngāti Toa, and then he got it wrong because he said that the person he interviewed was actually Ngāti Toa. However, that's irrelevant because there are slightly different versions. None of us are wrong. We have our own stories. I can remember as a child coming out here with my father and all of the kaumātua, and we used to walk along the beach. And what were we looking for? Bones. When we found them, we reburied them. That's what this is about. Right through here is when we talk about wahi tapu. All of this is wahi tapu. We are talking about a specific site of Kōwhai Pā. Then we changed it to Kōwai Pā when the three iwi came together, because we lived together. We were still separate within the Pā site. But none of us are wrong. We all have our own stories. And because of whakapapa, we can tell those stories, we can relate those stories, we can argue those stories. But at the end of the day, we are all right. Ka pai.
And I have to defer to Arthur because he's my uncle by marriage. My father married his sister. Whakapapa. Now, I must never forget that.
Kia ora, Arthur, and thanks for stepping up and telling that, because we've invited you a couple of times and I'm glad finally you came. There's a few others too that I think should say something because they have that knowledge. Pete, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I think the stuff that comes after Kōwhai is the interesting stuff as well. When this area was set aside for the iwi here, what some people thought should have been a massive reserve ended up being a very, very small reserve. So what we call Wairau Pā over here was only about 700 acres. And then the people back in the day got a reserve over there, it was called Pukatia, which ended up being 2,180 odd acres. So quite a lot smaller than what we thought it was going to be. After that, that reserve was set aside, there were some land purchases made, and what we call Wairau 1, 2 and 3 were purchased by Hearts people, by the Puki Kohatus land. So there was a Wairau 1 down the end there, Wairau 2 next to it, and Wairau 3, which was this part here. So that's another layer of the story as we're going into the future. And Wairau 3 actually stayed in Māori ownership until 1952. And it was actually, I think the story goes, during the Depression when people had to work, the government loaned the people down here some money, and at the end of the Depression, the war came, and then in the 50s, I think the Aotearoa whānau ended up having to sell that block. Is that right,
Yeah, it was a development. They called it the development scheme through the Māori Affairs. So what they did was that they built the riverbank. It was all about the riverbank because we had none, so we were being flooded out all the time. And so they built the riverbank, and then they used 3 acts on our people to actually say this is why you now have to pay. However, if you looked at the 3 acts, if you were a Māori farmer, like the Rory estate, and if you were beside them and you were a Pākehā family and a farmer, you did not have to pay for it. It came out of the Rory estate and any other Māori whānau who were actually farming the land. So it was about, by the time they finished, it was about £7,000 in those days that we had to pay back, and we didn't want it in the first place.
Receipt for 10,
yeah,
£10,700 to the estate of Rory Estate.
Yeah. So they had we've been going through the Māori land court so many times in that period that they kept trying to chop it back, and even then we started losing land when they started bringing out other acts. So they brought out the acts where they then merged all of our people together into blocks, and then they called it uneconomical. When it became uneconomical, then you could be one person within a whānau and you could actually put money down for that land. The rest of those people lost their land. So that was in the 50s, 60s, 70s, coming through. So we haven't changed. But at the end of the day, and Richard hit on it, and so did Paul, this is about whakapapa. That's what this is all about. Who we are. This is our tūranga waiwai. You can't take that away from us.
And not just this piece. I mean, as we look around the landscape, I've heard the idea of whakapapa in the landscape. So you can look at it on paper, but as we look at some of these prominent landmarks, Miniko Ariari, Tapuai or Urnuku, for the last few years we've been learning about it, and I think that's a big part of the drive on preserving this particular part. It's one of the last past sites in a series along here that exist. If we let this be bulldozed and developed, and if we let Heritage New Zealand and anybody else that is involved tell us that across that fence is Kōwhai Park and this isn't, then it's all over. It's finished. We can't stand here and we can't claim that, you know. So I just want to say one last thing. I need to hobble back to the tent to prepare the kinners to make sure somebody else is limping tomorrow. But we are currently standing in the red zone. What that means is Heritage New Zealand came in 2016, surveyed the area and designated places that can't be developed without a specific permit. We're in that area. This is a red zone. That is a red zone, and yet I'm seeing vineyard that's being developed. So if somebody wants to sue me and remove my house for telling the truth because there's a legal loophole out there that incriminates me for being honest, I guess I'm just going to have to deal with that at this point because that's where I'm at. Not worried about a can of spray paint. You know, if people can't be honest and have to use a fat wad of cash to be dishonest, like what we've seen just recently with Renee Maihi and Bob Jones, if that's where we're at, I'm just disappointed. So I'm going to go back to the kinners, prepare them, and I'm going to let Wayne take over, and he'll explain the high series going through there where all the pits are that we walked across, photographed, and no longer exist. Kia ora everybody, thank you for coming.
Keelan, before you go, Ngāti Rārua, the Runanga has come out with a statement. That means that all of Ngāti Rārua are now behind that statement. We won't change.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'd like to see my other each stand up and do the same thing.
I just wanted to say one thing. Once again, for context, Pete started at 770. The original deal down at McDonald's Inn, and I'm not blaming you, McDonald's. The original deal was 20 square miles from the mouth of the river up into there. Now I've got my legal representative, Mr. Hardy Jones. He remembers that document. 20 square miles up into Port Underwood, 2 miles inland. That's what the tribes were promised. not 770. That's what we accepted. Really important when we're balancing out, you know, who took what and why it happened. That was our start point, 20 square miles. That's not just a length, that's square miles, 20 by 2 by 20 up that way as well, Mike, plus all of the rivers.
That's right.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about that, Richard, was that with the receipt that we saw, we also saw the surveyor's notes. And his instructions were to find land suitable for Maori Reserve. And the description was, I've been through the plain, I've been on the other side of down to Kaparataho, I've looked around, and all of it is useful for European farming. The only bit I could find that was of no use and would therefore be suitable for Māori as a reserve was this land up towards Pakatia, and it was 20 square miles. The report then went in with his recommendation that that should be your reserve. Governor Gray, however, said, that's a very big piece of land, knock it down to just, what was it, 1,700 acres. Yeah.
Oh. And today we call that 20 square miles the Chater Estate.
You spoke before about the, over here there used to be stop banks, and the interesting thing from the district council's archives was how the stop bank was built. Now everybody knows that with a stop bank, if it overflows, it undermines and then washes away. So there's no point having both sides of the stop bank as high as each other. The best way to do it from an engineering point of view is to have one side slightly lower. So if it comes through with a big flood, you only lose one side. The Chaters wanted to be protected, so the high side was the Chaters, the low side was this part of the Wairau, and I've heard from others today that is why you got flooded every year, because they had built the stop bank lower on your side. Kia ora.
Oh, right, kia ora, Mike.
Sorry, the floor was with Pete before we stole it. My apologies, Pete.
Oh, no, that's all good. I think that was cool.
And did anybody else want to say anything, John?
Oh, I could only add on to what Art said. The creation of the drains. When they created the drains, it wasn't the people who farmed the land that had to pay for it, it was the people that owned it. When the 21-year perpetual lease blocks were put out for Europeans to use, so the usage of the land became European, the ownership of the land stayed with Māori, but they couldn't create an income off of it, but they were still charged the bills for the improvement of the land. So that was piled on top of the estate.
Right, well, we must be off to our next place, are we, Em?
Yeah. This young fella's just found a bit of obsidian on the ground here, and that's grey, so that's from Mere Island. It's volcanic glass, mate, and you'll find that it's very old. And what happens is that was first brought here from our first ancestors. Came down from Mere Island, obsidian, and of course around Taupo. So there's different colours. There's grey and there's green, and there's a mahogany as well.
Okay.
Very sharp. And this artefact here, what just got handed to me by Richard Andrew, where the digger's been digging out there, and this is a piece of an adze. This is Pakohi. It's either from the Maitai or Whangamoa. And you can see this adze as it's been a piece of the adze head for everybody. Come and have a look if you like. And you'll just find this sort of stuff lying on the ground out here been broken up, because we haven't had an iwi monitor here to monitor it while it's being destroyed. Hang on to that with this, and we'll as people find bits and pieces. You come and have a look if you like.
Okay, shall we move to the next?
If we just wander out here, we'll show you.
We're going this way, boys.
I just remind everyone from a safety perspective, let's not start picking stuff up, because otherwise we get ourselves into trouble. Okay, let's go.
Say, Papa, you try getting me going. I'm not going to. I should go.
I never get sick. And I don't blame you.
Okay.
Grab it, Marty.
Just going to run out. It's alright. Just record when they're talking. We're still streaming. I checked it just before. Good. A few people. Everyone, all the
online.
Sort of.
Anything about that?
It's going good. Are we getting audio on that goal? Well, we need audio. Otherwise, what's a whole heap of shots? We really want audio. So there's no audio. You guys don't know. I don't know who to wire up. Richard and the speakers, I think. So we've got no audio. So you've got no audio inside the tent? I don't know who you were doing. It's the people speaking. Yeah, but
I got it.
you got audio?
Recorded. Yeah, this will be
But only on that. So.
As long as it's audio, it's like, fuck, that's the most important part. That's what you taught me the whole time, Stu.
Yeah, but I've got to know who to hook up. I didn't have no. I just sat there and waited ready. I had mics on. I've got mics on me now.
I need can we hook Richard and Noah then? Or is it too late? Richard at least.
Have we got the mic in here?
I've got the wireless mics on.
Yeah.
Sweet ass, bro. Yeah, well. Yeah.
Get over and get a bit of.
If you anybody got any questions, don't hesitate to ask. So we've got a bit of a walk now across the other end of the grapes, and that's where the traders block starts, and straight over the fence. That's where the pits are in their natural state. Okay.
And it's carving still in there.
Oh no, I can also do
And I know you get rid of it, eh?
Changes over the land to this. Our cousins. I don't know how it goes. Surely it can't do it all very fast. Oh, you don't want to be having an auxiliary aid.
No, that's right. Yeah, I got trespassed twice down at Belfast.
Harvey got Harvey matched up.
Oh, yes.
87, 86.
I remember that.
Our chief.
Yeah, I was talking to Molly about that. She always used to have me on.
It's interesting, that pit there, because there was that much fat in it. Richard Walton couldn't push it. God damn it, they must have been killing a lot of seals here. There's a big stone making area here. The archaeologists we had from the States with us, you know, we didn't even recognise it first off. We walked clean over the top of it, you know, just some chips and everything on rocks. He drew us back to it and said, oh, look at this area here, this is a big stone making area. And then he sort of looked around and went, holy shit, it's easy just to walk clean over something unless you've got that archaeological suit, and you know, but he's an expert ads maker, so you expect him to, you know, he knows his stuff. Yeah, but you know, that fire pit there's got that much fat in it, it'll never go away. So what have we got
here, Ab? Let's bring everyone together. And
well, what you're standing on there was a lot of seals killed here. So the fat what's in that fire pit right there, which was noticed when we did the coastal survey, that's one of the areas what came out where there was so much fat within that charcoal there, and so many seals over time had been obviously slayed there. And there's a massive big stone adze making area right here just above it. Yeah, so you know, here's the river, there's the sea. We always knew when the tide was out, the table was set. Of course you were going to live right here, and of course there is the Maricopa Drain, which takes you right through to all the swamps of what we know as Chaiters. So, and later on, the Chaiters connection with the Pa was the flax mill. And so the Pa everybody living at the Pa used to go over and work at the flax mill with Chaiters. Anyway, so we're just about on the boundary fence over here, and you'll be able to look over the fence at Chaiters, and well, this is the fence line that was moved. It was originally about 20 yards over here. Okay.
I just wondered, while we're here on a bit of an elevated area,
yes,
are we able to get an idea of the extent of Score 5 from here?
Well, the pits actually carry on down to the trees down there.
Sorry?
The pits carry on down to those pine trees down there, and they start from down at Baldick's. So at Baldick's trees down there, which is, you can see the next lot of gum trees at Baldick's Bend.
Yep.
The pits start from there and they run all along this embankment all the way through to those pine trees over there.
How far that way?
And well, they seem to be high on here, and then there's little bits of occupation all the way, especially along the drain, the Marakupa drain, and then the Pukaka over there.
So is that round about Reynolds Stalker?
Oh yes, well, that's Reynolds' house, but the pits are on both sides of Reynolds' house, and we're all the rubbish and monsters were run up there. There's a whole series of pits that run along that 500 yards along there. There's huge pits all the way along that embankment there.
The only reason why I was asking, not to be difficult or test the knowledge, is to go back to that concept of Blenheim with Mayfield, Redwood Town, Spring Creek. So the whole area of settlement was Korwhai.
Yeah.
And there were suburbs for different parts. Then a battle took place, which was another name.
Yes.
For another event. And then after that, whereabouts did we move back to, where it was resettled?
Well, I think there's still, the fires were still burning here, but we just moved on to other good little sites. And like you say, Kōwhai Pa, there's always been somebody here. Always. Over time.
I just thought I'd get a sense of the extent of the area from you, that was all.
Yeah. When you look at the Kumara study, what we did a Kumara study, and it showed that from Kapurataho over here, when you're on south of Marlborough, on that site, the Kumara pits and gardens over there, we did a study from the Kumara pits and gardens there right through to Port Underwood to...
were there gardens here?
Yes, there was.
Whereabouts?
They were on the other side of where we are in the tent. They were about 500 yards on the other side of that. And actually, where the road is, where you go down the road of the bar, when you go about 500-600 yards down there, apparently they were over there on the right, towards the river. Is that right, Ali? Over there, there's pits over there, isn't there? Where the vineyard's been put in there.
Yeah, where the cottage is down.
Near your boundary, actually, over there somewhere, isn't it? Yeah.
So those, just to come back, because I thought, oh well, this is a really good place to see the area. Looking out there, those registered archaeological sites of the graves and the burial sites, how would I know where they are in all that green? What's the closest?
You don't know.
Well, we know where they are on the maps, but if we were looking out there now, I mean, it's easy to say the grapes. Are they by that brown lamp post or are they by the pylon? I was getting more of that.
There was a pump shed there.
Oh, yep.
Trying to get a look at it from here. If you follow this line of power poles, 3, 4 out to the paddock, there's a pump shed out there. Now there's a burial site there, out there. And then along the driveway from the house coming in where that car is just disappearing, from the house there, if you follow along, the original boundary, the Ngāti Rārua boundary, is where that power pole is there. When you come into the vineyard a bit, which actually came all the way out to the beach. So from about that pole along the driveway, there was a series of pits, and you'll probably remember those when you came down to demonstrate.
I do, well, I'm trying to pass that.
Those pits went along the driveway there,
yep,
which have been filled in now.
So that house there, that's Ronald's old house.
Yep.
Yeah.
The driveway's still there, so all of that whole area is what we're talking about.
Yes.
In front of the house.
Yes, all that.
And on the other side of the house?
There's a whole series of pits that run down there from that big tree behind the shed, and those big pits run all the way along that ridge down there, down the back. Okay, you'd remember all that, Ali?
Yeah, that driveway of Reynolds was altered when it went into the vineyard.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of that was altered, was definitely altered when it got put into a vineyard. But before that, it was altered again when Saunders was here, when you demonstrated in 2002. Yeah. So the trouble was you and Chock and Andrew Wilkie were there on that.
I think the reason why we wanted to come here and be on this terrace is so that you got a sense of the extent of the settlement here, because after the initial battle site, Ngāti Rārua, as Arthur's pointed out, Ngāti Rārua, Rangitane and Ngāti Toa had different parts of the pa, but not this part. This part in here stayed special.
Yeah, this is the massacre bit, because from where John and Arthur are over there into this Maricopa drain in here, this is where this massacre was in here.
We call it special.
Yes.
Otherwise, those Pākehās up there, that land that Ngāti Toa got, they start on about the Warau massacre, which I think now is an incident.
Oh, an incident.
An affray.
We're being careful with our language.
It's an affray.
So really, that was. So is everyone getting an idea now of the relationship between the miserable, niggardly reserves that we ended up with and the whole extent of the land that our people lived in for over 8 centuries. Because what we don't see is all the creeks, all the wetlands, the tuna, the eels, the shellfish, we don't see any of that. Over the back here was called Pipitea, for the series of wetlands, but that's another corridor, isn't it?
Yeah.
How's that? Cooks, I'm just aware the cooks will be starting to get crabby if we don't start heading back. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, the natural pits here, they start from where those guys are standing there. So all the undisturbed pits that haven't been bulldozed, thank you Anthony Chater for his family for not disturbing the pits.
Do people want to continue on to have a look at those pits? Kia koutou. They're up at what, just by that fence, Ab? Or?
Yeah, right there.
So if I look over the fence, I can see them?
Yes.
If we do that and then hook you out to
Okay,
say the cooks are waiting.
So we'll do that and then we'll start moving back for lunch.
Yeah, but that will be nothing.
So who owns the land here?
I've got 7 minutes on that card. Batteries on 1 bar. You want me to hold that? You alright?
Things going on here.
Yeah. 51 minutes. And I've got 1 bar.
Okay.